Shatter the 7 year myth. Why transformation happens now, not later. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I want to start by sharing something that might fundamentally challenge what many of us believe about personal growth and transformation. We've all heard the saying that humans change every 7 years. Our cells regenerate, our perspectives shift, our priorities evolve. But what if I told you that meaningful transformation doesn't require 7 years? What if profound change could happen annually, monthly, or even daily? This revolutionary insight didn't come from a scientific journal or a self help bestseller. It came from an extraordinary conversation I had with Bilquis Harmon on the Pink Parachute Diaries podcast. Bilquis is not just a visionary leader, she's a force of nature who has dedicated her life to empowering Black women through personal growth and community building. Her work has touched thousands of lives, creating ripples of transformation that have turned into waves of change across communities. What makes Bilkey truly exceptional is her ability to see potential where others see limitations, to create pathways where others see only walls. Today, I want to explore this counterintuitive idea that Bilquis shared, that transformation isn't a distant milestone, but an ongoing process we can actively cultivate right now. And I want to show you why this matters, not just for our individual journeys, but for our collective progress as a society. When we think about change, we often imagine it as something that happens to us, something external, sometimes unwelcome, frequently uncomfortable. But what Bilkey helped me understand is that change can be something we embrace, something we invite in, something we design intentionally. This perspective is revolutionary because it puts us in the driver's seat of our own evolution. It suggests that we don't have to wait for time to pass or for circumstances to force our hand. We can choose growth. We can engineer transformation. We can decide today to become more than we were yesterday. But why does this matter? Why should we care about accelerating our personal growth? The answer lies in three key insights that emerged from my conversation with Bilquis. First, embracing change as a catalyst for growth allows us to adapt more quickly to our rapidly evolving world. Second, prioritizing healing and self care ensures that we're always moving toward becoming the best version of ourselves. And third, building some supportive communities amplifies our individual growth and creates ripple effects that can transform entire systems. Let me illustrate these principles with some powerful real world examples that will show you exactly why this matters so deeply. Consider the story of Melanin Con, founded by Donovan Woodbury in 2014. What began as a small gathering of Black professionals in a cramped community center with just 37 attendees has evolved into a powerful annual conference in Washington, D.C., that now hosts over 3,000 participants. Initially, Woodbury faced the challenge that many Black professionals know all too well: isolation, lack of support networks, and limited access to opportunities for advancement. Woodbury didn't wait 7 years for change to happen. He didn't even wait 1 year. He acted immediately, creating a solution that was elegantly simple yet profoundly effective. Organize annual conferences that provide space for networking, learning, and community building. What's remarkable about Melanin Con isn't just the growth of the event itself, but the transformations that happen within that space. I spoke with Tanya, who attended the very first Melanin Con gathering. She told me, "I walked in feeling alone in my struggles as the only Black woman in my department. I walked out with 5 new mentors, 2 job offers, and a completely different view of what was possible for my career." Tanya didn't wait 7 years to evolve. She experienced a shift in perspective in a single weekend that fundamentally altered her career trajectory. This illustrates Bilquis's insight perfectly. Transformation doesn't require years of gradual change. It can happen in concentrated moments of connection, learning, and inspiration. But personal growth isn't always smooth sailing, especially when systemic barriers stand in the way. This brings me to our second example. Julie Craig, another powerful voice in our community, recently discussed the urgent realities of workplace equity for Black professionals. She highlighted a disturbing trend: a 10% rise in racial discrimination charges filed in the past year alone, indicating persistent systemic barriers to success. In this challenging landscape, Julie emphasized the power of documentation as a tool for challenging bias and securing rightful opportunities. She shared the story of Marcus, a brilliant software engineer who was repeatedly passed over for promotion despite consistently outperforming his colleagues. For 18 months, Marcus meticulously documented every achievement, every positive client interaction, and every instance where his contributions were overlooked. When a leadership position opened, he presented this documentation to HR and his supervisor. The result? He secured the promotion he deserved within weeks, not years. His manager later admitted that seeing the documented pattern forced a reckoning with unconscious bias that might otherwise have continued indefinitely. This case demonstrates that personal growth sometimes requires us to confront uncomfortable truths and advocate for ourselves. It shows that transformation isn't just about positive thinking, it's about strategic action in the face of obstacles. And most importantly, it reveals that we don't have to accept the status quo for years before seeing change. We can catalyze transformation through deliberate, documented resistance to inequity. But what about the deeper emotional dimensions of growth? This brings me to our third example. Sharita Flores, a trauma specialist and community builder, explored how truth telling can transform trauma into triumph for Black professionals. She acknowledged a painful reality that Black professionals often face trauma and isolation in their careers that can take a devastating toll on mental health and career progression. But rather than accepting this as an unchangeable fact, she proposed a powerful solution: truth telling and community support as strategies for transforming trauma into triumph. By creating healing circles where professionals could share their experiences in safe, supportive environments, she witnessed remarkable transformations. One participant, Darnell, had carried the weight of a racist encounter with a senior executive for 3 years. The incident had diminished his confidence, limited his willingness to speak up in meetings, and ultimately stalled his career. After sharing his story in one of Sharita's healing circles, receiving validation, and hearing others' similar experiences, something shifted for him. It was like the shame I'd been carrying wasn't mine to carry anymore, he said. I felt 10 pounds lighter walking out of that room. And the next day, I spoke up in a meeting for the first time in years. What's particularly striking about Sharita's insight is how it challenges our conventional wisdom about healing. We often think healing takes time, lots of time. We say time heals all wounds. But what if the catalyst for healing isn't time itself, but what we do with that time? What if actively sharing our truths in supportive communities accelerates healing in ways that passive waiting never could? These three examples, Melanin Khan, Julie Craig's advocacy for documentation, and Sharita Flores's emphasis on truth telling all point to a revolutionary understanding of personal transformation. They suggest that growth isn't something that happens to us over long periods. It's something we actively create through community, strategic action, and authentic expression. This brings us back to Bilquis Harmon's core insight. Transformation can happen annually, monthly, or even daily, allowing us to evolve spiritually and professionally at a pace that matches our rapidly changing world. This mindset encourages us to be adaptable, to learn from our experiences, and to help others in their journey of transformation. But there's something deeper here that I want us to consider. When we embrace this accelerated view of personal growth, we're not just changing ourselves, we're changing what's possible for our communities and our society. Think about it. If each of us committed to intentional growth and transformation, not waiting for years to pass, but actively seeking evolution right now, imagine how quickly we could address the challenges facing our world. Imagine how rapidly we could dismantle systems of inequity. Imagine how swiftly we could create new models of community and connection. The traditional view of change slow, incremental, requiring patience and time often serves those who benefit from the status quo. It tells those facing barriers and challenges to wait their turn, to be patient, to trust that eventually things will improve. But Bilquis's perspective offers a more empowering alternative. We can accelerate change through intentional action, community building, and a commitment to ongoing growth. So, what does this mean for you? How can you apply this understanding of accelerated transformation in your own life? First, reject the notion that meaningful change requires years of waiting. Start seeing transformation as something you can actively cultivate right now through intentional choices and actions. Second, prioritize healing and self care not as luxuries, but as essential components of your growth journey. When we're wounded by discrimination, by trauma, by systemic barriers, our growth is stunted. Healing isn't separate from growth, it's a prerequisite for it. Third, invest in building and participating in supportive communities. As we've seen through our examples, transformation happens faster and more profoundly when we're connected to others who support our evolution. And finally, become a catalyst for others' growth. Share your truths, document injustices, create spaces for connection and learning. When you help others transform, you accelerate your own growth in the process. I stand before you today, not just to share ideas, but to ignite a movement that rejects the passive waiting game and embraces the power of now. Your transformation doesn't need to wait for some magical 7 year mark. Your healing doesn't need to be a long, lonely journey. Your impact doesn't need to be delayed. Today, I challenge you to walk out of this room and make one deliberate choice toward transformation. Reach out to build community, document your worth, share your truth, be the catalyst that accelerates not just your own growth, but the growth of everyone around you, because the world cannot wait 7 more years for you to become who you're meant to be. We need you, your full, healed, powerful self right now. Thank you.